After giving birth, my wicked mother-in-law tried to steal my baby in the hospital. This bastard is trash, he doesn't deserve my name, she shrieked, humiliating me in front of my entire family, but she went pale and started shaking when the doctor. No one should have to give birth fearing their child will be taken, but Scarlett Hayes did. She was only 22. Her skin seemed even paler under the sterile white hospital lights, as if fear had drained all the blood from her. Her hair was damp, plastered to her forehead, and her hands trembled on an old metallic gurney. The air smelled of bleach and exhaustion. Her breathing was ragged, more from nerves than contractions. She was alone, completely alone. The nurse who admitted her didn't offer a word beyond the necessities. Just a curt instruction to wait in a hard plastic chair before vanishing behind a grubby curtain. The other women in the emergency ward were ghosts in the same purgatory, all waiting their turn to bring life into the world, as if that weren't already an act of war. Scarlett had no one to hold her hand, no mother, no sister, no friend. And worst of all, the baby's father, Ethan Crawford, had vanished 3 weeks prior. The last time they spoke, he was distant, strange. He'd texted her, saying he couldn't handle it anymore, that the situation was out of his hands. Then silence. A chasm so vast that 1,000 desperate calls and hundreds of messages couldn't fill it. He's going to come, Scarlett whispered to herself, wincing through a contraction. He can't leave me like this. He promised he'd be here. Ethan wasn't just anyone. He was a tall, handsome medical resident, with a smile that could sell peace to a broken soul. They met when she was cleaning floors at the private university where he was doing his specialization. He noticed her, talked to her, listened, and eventually made her believe that love really did exist for people like her. Scarlett, your history isn't trash. It's a story of strength, he'd told her one night, stroking her belly for the first time. My mom won't understand, but I do. But his mother, Eleanor Sterling. Eleanor was another story entirely. Scarlett had met her once at a family dinner that ended in disaster. Eleanor had looked at her as if she were a contagion that had crept into her marble home. She wiped her hands after shaking Scarlett's. She asked in an ironic tone if Scarlett knew how to use fine silverware. And when Scarlett tried to respond, Eleanor cut her off with a poisonous smile. Your accent is so colorful. From that night on, Scarlett knew this woman didn't want her near, much less near her son. But Ethan had defended her. He'd said he loved her, that their relationship was real, that they would move in together before the baby was born. But he hadn't kept his promise. Now here was Scarlett gritting her teeth on a cold gurney, surrounded by strangers, her heart raw and exposed. A nurse, Nurse Bethany, abruptly entered, checked her chart and muttered, 8 centimeters dilated. You're going straight to the delivery room. Push hard. They wheeled her down a long corridor where the fluorescent lights flickered as if everything were about to go dark. The cold wasn't just in the air, it was a coldness of the soul. The feeling of abandonment weighed more than the contractions. In the delivery room, they dressed her in a thin gown and started in 4. The doctor barely looked at her. He was in a rush. There were more births than available beds. The city was collapsing, and public health care was a battlefield. Take deep breaths, a nurse ordered. Scarlett obeyed, clenching her fists. She cried, screamed, bit her lips until they bled. She remembered Ethan's promise. She remembered the smile of their first kiss. She remembered the feeling when she first heard her son's heartbeat during an ultrasound. That was enough to endure the pain, to push, to not give up. And then she heard it. A cry, a new scream, a perfect sound. It's a boy, the doctor announced. Healthy. Time stopped. They placed the baby on her chest, wrapped in a blue blanket. Scarlett looked at him as if he were the first thing she had ever truly owned. Her baby's eyes were closed, and his pink mouth moved, seeking warmth. She stroked him. She cried with him. Hello, love. Mommy's here. Everything else ceased to matter. The poverty, the abandonment, the humiliations. In that instant, everything vanished. Only the two of them remained. But the peace was short-lived. A few hours later, after moving her to a shared room, Scarlett awoke from a light sleep with a knot of dread in her chest. She looked beside her. Her baby, Leo, slept in a metal bassinet with a plastic band on his wrist. Everything seemed fine, until the door opened. A woman entered, elegant, perfectly coiffed hair, expensive perfume, the same sharp look Scarlett would never forget. Eleanor Sterling. What are you doing here? Scarlett asked, her voice strained. Eleanor didn't answer immediately. She approached the bassinet as if inspecting an object. So this is what you decided to bring into the world, she murmured. He's your grandson, Scarlett replied, getting up as best she could. And don't disrespect me. Don't put that word in my mouth, Eleanor interrupted coldly. Scarlett felt it. That heavy energy, that contempt disguised as class. She wanted to scream, but fear paralyzed her. Where is Ethan? She asked. My son is reconsidering his choices, Eleanor said, not looking at her. But that's not what's important. The important thing is that this child cannot carry our name. Scarlett didn't understand. What are you saying? I'm saying, Eleanor slowly turned to her, that this trash you have birthed is not part of my family. We will not acknowledge him, and I will personally ensure he is registered with another surname. He will not drag our lineage through the mud you crawled out of. The room filled with a brutal silence. Only the distant beep of a machine in the next room could be heard. You can't do that, Scarlett whispered, fighting back tears. Eleanor smiled, pulling out her cell phone. My husband is a federal judge. In this country, darling, power doesn't need permission. Only silence. Scarlett took a step forward. She was trembling, clenching her teeth. He is my son. You won't take him from me. You won't take him from me. Won't take him. Eleanor repeated mockingly. Do you really think you, with your history of abandonment, no resources, no stable place to live, are going to raise this child better than we can? What are you going to bathe him in? Rainwater? The word stung like slaps. I love him, Scarlett declared. I don't need to be rich to give him what he needs. Love. Eleanor took a step toward the bassinet and stroked the baby with her fingertips. And when he starts getting sick, when he needs expensive treatment, are you going to pay for it with tears? Just then Nurse Bethany entered, surprised by the scene. Is everything all right here? Scarlett lunged forward. She's trying to take my son. Call someone, please. The nurse looked at Eleanor, then at Scarlett. She hesitated. Ma'am, I need you to step out. Do you know who I am? Eleanor said without raising her voice. Do you want to lose your job? The nurse lowered her gaze. She left without another word. Scarlett scooped her baby into her arms. You're leaving, she said with determination. You have no right. Eleanor walked slowly toward her, leaning in with an expression of absolute disdain. Her voice was a poisoned whisper. This bastard will never carry our surname. And right at that moment, the door opened again. A figure entered with a determined stride. White coat, chart in hand. The doctor. Mrs. Sterling, he said, not hiding his tension. I need to speak with you alone. It's urgent. Eleanor looked at him. For the first time in years, she seemed to waver. She straightened, adjusted her designer jacket, and walked toward the exit without looking back. Scarlett pressed her son to her chest. The baby slept, innocent, defenseless, and though he didn't know it, he had just been born in the middle of a storm. A war where his mother was the only barrier between him and a world where power believed it was entitled to everything. But what the doctor was about to reveal would change everything. The Sterling family's secrets unravel. The tension in the room was palpable. Scarlett held her son tightly, as if a second of distraction would be enough for him to be torn away. Eleanor slowly turned her face towards the doctor. He held a chart firmly, and his expression was not the usual look of a tired physician. There was something else in his eyes, discomfort, seriousness, perhaps fear. Mrs. Sterling, the doctor repeated, I need you to step outside with me. This is important. She looked at him with the arrogance that preceded her everywhere she went, that attitude of superiority that made her walk as if the world owed her something. She gave Scarlett one last look before adjusting her branded coat and exiting, followed by the doctor. Scarlett was left alone. The baby slept on her chest, but the silence brought no peace. Her heart hammered against her ribs, trying to escape. She didn't know how much time passed. Maybe 10 minutes, perhaps half an hour. When the door opened again, Eleanor returned, accompanied by another tall man with meticulously groomed gray hair, a dark suit, and a hard, empty gaze. Scarlett recognized him instantly from photos. It was Judge Elias Sterling, Eleanor's husband, a federal judge and Ethan's father. The air in the room changed, becoming denser, more dangerous. So, you are Scarlett? Elias asked without smiling. Scarlett didn't answer. She just held her son a little tighter. I'm going to be clear with you, he said, closing the door behind him. This scandal ends today. My family cannot afford a media circus. Not now, not with the elections so close. I understand you've recorded things, sent messages, even tried to file complaints. Whatever you say won't be credible. You have no backing, no witnesses, and you have no money to defend yourself. Am I clear? Scarlett trembled. I'm not trying to destroy anyone, she managed to say. I just want to keep my son. He's all I have. And you will have him, Elias said, but in silence. We want you to sign some papers. We'll assist you financially, but you disappear. No interviews, no social media, no grudges. Scarlett felt a knot in her stomach. And what if I don't sign? The man took a step closer. The hospital report notes that you had episodes of anxiety, insomnia during pregnancy, and nervous breakdowns. Furthermore, you lack a stable residence or a fixed job. There are judges who would consider that this baby would be better off with another family, with resources, with stability. You're threatening me. I am offering you a solution. Don't be too proud to accept it. The door opened again. This time, another figure entered. A woman. It was Nurse Bethany from the intake ward. She had witnessed everything since Scarlett arrived. She looked nervous. Doctor, she said, referring to the physician who had stepped out. The records office just called. Mrs. Sterling is trying to register the baby with a different name. Scarlett bolted upright. What? Eleanor finally spoke. We will register him as Raphael Sterling. It will be better for everyone. My son wants nothing to do with this. You and I know this child wasn't wanted. You were just a distraction, an affair that got out of hand. Scarlett burst into tears. You can't do that. You can't. Elias raised his voice, not shouting, but with a firmness that chilled everyone present. Sign the documents, Scarlett. Do the right thing. This can end here with a future for you, or it can end very badly. Nurse Bethany stood motionless, watching. No, Scarlett murmured between sobs. I will not sign anything. I will not give up my son. Eleanor stepped forward, her tone one of pity more than fury. You know, there are things love can't buy. That child has no future with you. We can give him everything you can't. Private school, medical insurance, languages, and most importantly, the name. Don't deprive him of that out of selfishness. Scarlett raised her head. Her eyes, still tear-filled, burned with a determination they hadn't seen in her. And what will you tell him when he grows up? That his mother abandoned him for money? That his life was bought like an object? No, I won't allow it. Elias turned to Eleanor. This is getting complicated. Where is Ethan? I told him to come. He's not answering. Insist. This cannot stand. Scarlett listened in silence as the baby began to stir in her arms. She realized she couldn't stay passive. She had to act. She waited for the moment. When the nurse was distracted, she opened the blanket and checked her son's wristband. It still had her name, Scarlett, with the registration number. She knew if they took it, she lost everything. The doctor re-entered, this time with a more strained expression. Pardon the interruption, but this is getting out of control. The hospital cannot allow Mrs. Sterling to modify registration data without the mother's authorization. I have legal standing, Elias said. I can intervene if necessary. This isn't a courthouse, Judge Sterling, the doctor replied. And while this child is under medical observation, the decisions are made by the mother, barring a court order. And there is none. Eleanor pursed her lips. Are you sure you want to involve yourself in this? I am sure that I will follow medical protocol, he replied firmly. For the first time, Scarlett felt that someone was on her side. Nurse Bethany also seemed to regain her composure. If you want to initiate legal proceedings, do it outside. But here, you cannot force her to sign anything or register the baby without her consent. Elias sighed in annoyance. This is not over. Eleanor looked at him. We're leaving. This isn't how it's handled. I'm calling our attorney. They left the room. The tension dissipated slightly. The doctor turned to Scarlett. I'm going to request that you be moved to a private room. For security. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for believing me. It's not about belief, he said. It's about protecting a newborn and his mother. Hours later, now in a quieter room, Scarlett checked her phone. She had a new message from Ethan. Don't make a scene. We'll talk. That was all. Nothing more. No explanation, no apology, no word of comfort. She typed a reply but then deleted it. She looked at her sleeping son and decided she wouldn't waste any more energy begging someone who was never truly there. In the early morning, she received a visit from a hospital social worker. He held a report and had a kind demeanor. Scarlett, good morning. I was asked to review your situation. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your support network. I have no family. My mother died when I was little. I never knew my father. I have no siblings. Ethan was the only thing I had. And now I have him, she replied, looking at the baby. The social worker nodded. We're going to try and help you. This case has reached the administration. We're in touch with women's advocacy. You are no longer alone. For the first time in days, Scarlett felt she could breathe. The hell wasn't over, but she was no longer burning alone. A biological impossibility. The next day, very early, when the hospital was still stirring with dim lights and silent hallways, a nurse approached with a folder. "Scarlett, I have something you should see." It was the baby's intake report: date, time, weight, height, medical observations. Everything was in order, except for a handwritten note at the bottom, added by someone from the lab. Discrepancy between mother's and newborn's blood types. Genetic review suggested to confirm parentage. Scarlett read it twice. Her heart pounded. What does this mean? The nurse lowered her voice. Your son's blood type doesn't match yours, and according to the records, it doesn't match Ethan's either. Scarlett felt the floor disappear. Are you saying he's not my son? No. What we're saying is that it needs to be reviewed. It could be a lab error or something more. Scarlett hugged the baby tightly. She felt he was being ripped from her again, but this time it wasn't a legal threat. It was something deeper, something she couldn't even understand yet. And just when she thought nothing else could happen, there was a knock at the door. "Ms. Hayes, someone is asking to see you." "A journalist. Ava Thompson says she wants to help you." The story hadn't ended, it was just beginning. Scarlett remained silent after hearing the name. Ava Thompson. She hadn't heard of her before, not on social media or TV, but something in her intuition told her she should listen. She nodded slowly, and the nurse stepped out to let the visitor in. A woman in her mid-30s entered, dressed simply but professionally, without excessive makeup, a notebook in one hand, a recorder in the other. Her eyes, the first thing Scarlett noticed, were different. They weren't the eyes of a curious person. They were the eyes of someone who had already seen too much. "You're Scarlett?" she asked in a low voice. Scarlett nodded without releasing the baby. "I'm Ava. I work as an independent journalist, specializing in human rights, public health, gender issues. Someone tipped me off about what's happening here, and I want to help you if you let me." Scarlett frowned, distrustful. "How do you know what's happening?" "There are nurses in this hospital who disagree with what they've witnessed. One of them contacted a collective I'm part of. They said a mother was being pressured to give up her child, that there were legal threats, and they wanted to register the child without her consent." Scarlett looked down. Her voice was barely a whisper. "All of that is true, but I can't prove it. They told me I have no rights to anything." "You have more rights than they've made you believe," Ava replied, pulling out her notebook. "But I need you to tell me everything. From the beginning." Scarlett did so, with pauses, with tears, with contained anger. From the moment she met Ethan to the most recent threat from Judge Sterling. When she finished, Ava closed her notebook. "I'm going to investigate all of this, but I need something else. Do you have any audio, video, or records?" Scarlett pulled out her phone. She had partial recordings, conversations with Eleanor, a photo of the registration request that had been printed without her authorization. Everything was there. Ava reviewed it and nodded. "This is enough to start, but there's something more important now." "What?" "The medical note that makes no sense. The blood type discrepancy. Is there something else to this, something they don't want you to know?" Scarlett fell silent. Then the door opened. It was the doctor. "Scarlett, I need to talk to you. Can we be alone?" Ava stood up without arguing. Before leaving, she said in a low voice, "No matter what happens, you are not alone." The doctor closed the door carefully and sat opposite her. "I'm going to be frank with you. The lab detected an inconsistency. Your blood type is O negative. Your baby's is AB positive. That combination is biologically impossible, which means something doesn't add up." Scarlett felt everything collapse. "Are you saying he's not my child?" "No. I'm saying we need to confirm with genetic tests. It's protocol. The medical administration has been notified, and the results should be ready in less than 48 hours, but I need your written consent to perform the test." Scarlett signed without thinking. "And Ethan?" she asked. "He also needs to take the test, but so far he has refused to show up." The doctor paused, then lowered his voice. "And there's something else. I shouldn't tell you, but last night someone tried to switch your baby's room. They provided an order signed by the administration, but the wristband numbers didn't match. A nurse noticed and prevented it." Scarlett looked at him with wide eyes. "What are they trying to do?" "I don't know, but it's not normal, and it's not legal." The doctor left. Scarlett remained, staring at her son. She wondered for the first time if this child was truly hers. Not by love, she had loved him since before he was born. But if she had been the victim of a deception, where was her real child? Hours later, she received a WhatsApp message from an unknown number. "Stop talking, you're making things worse." She deleted it without replying. That same morning, Ava returned with news. She had started pulling strings. She posted an anonymous complaint on social media. She narrated part of the case, and in less than 2 hours, it had over 10,000 shares. Scarlett's name wasn't mentioned, but the story moved many. Comments multiplied. Some demanded justice, others called her a liar, some even accused her of seeking fame. But amidst the tide of voices, people began offering help: an attorney, a social worker, a pediatrician. It was then that he appeared. Ethan walked down the hallway, his face partially covered by a baseball cap. He was wearing athletic clothes but wasn't sweating. His eyes were downcast, his voice neutral. He entered without a greeting. He closed the door. "Scarlett." She looked at him with cold eyes. "Did you come to take something else?" "I came so this doesn't escalate. You're creating a scandal over something you don't understand." "And what is it I don't understand? That they tried to take my son? That your mother tried to register him without my permission? That the hospital detected that my blood doesn't match my baby's? You're exaggerating. This is all crazy." "Don't call me crazy," Scarlett yelled, and the baby stirred uncomfortably in her arms. "You have no idea what I've been through here." Ethan sighed. "I didn't want this to happen. It wasn't my intention." "And what was? To disappear? To leave me alone on the day of the birth?" "Your pregnancy was a mistake," he said almost in a whisper. That sentence shattered her. "A mistake? My son is a mistake to you. I didn't want to be a father. Not now. My mother had other plans, big plans for me. And you ruined everything." Scarlett fell silent. Not for a lack of desire to speak, but because she didn't want her son to hear any more venom in his voice. "Get out, Ethan. You have nothing left to do here." He looked at her one last time, but said nothing. He left without closing the door completely. The truth of the switched babies. That night, Scarlett was called to the chief medical officer's office. Ava accompanied her. Eleanor Sterling was waiting there with 2 attorneys. The CMO had a serious expression. "Ms. Hayes, the hospital has been notified by a judicial authority of a request to evaluate your emotional stability. An investigation has been opened into your capacity to raise the minor." Ava stepped forward. "On what basis?" "Based on a report presented by Mrs. Sterling, who asserts that Scarlett has had episodes of paranoia, aggression, and lacks a stable environment." "That is a lie," Scarlett said on the verge of collapse. "We have evidence that shows the contrary. Recordings, messages, testimonies." "That is manipulated material," Eleanor's attorney interrupted. "We know how you work. We will not allow them to declare her unstable just because they don't want her to raise her own child," Ava countered. The CMO sighed. "While this is resolved, the baby will remain under observation in pediatrics. No one can remove him without a medical order." Scarlett felt a blow to her chest. They were taking her son without removing him. She didn't sleep that night. Neither did Ava. They had activated contacts. The public advocate was aware. Human rights organizations were beginning to pay attention, but nothing was enough for now. The baby was isolated and Scarlett was cornered. The next morning, the doctor returned with the folder in hand. His eyes no longer hid anything. "I have the results," he said. Scarlett shot up, and he sat down as if he didn't know how to begin. This cannot be true." Ava leaned closer. "What is it?" The doctor opened the folder. His hands were trembling. "Neither Scarlett nor Ethan are the biological parents of this child." The world stopped. Ava covered her mouth with her hand. Scarlett felt herself falling into a bottomless void. Her baby wasn't hers. "Are you sure?" Ava asked. "Could it be an error?" "We repeated it twice. In different labs. There is no genetic match with either of them." "Then whose child is this?" Scarlett whispered. The doctor didn't answer, he just looked at her. In his eyes was something he still didn't dare to say, something darker, deeper, something that was still buried under many layers of secrets. And that was only one part of the truth. The most dangerous was yet to come. The price of a name. The doctor slowly closed the results folder and remained silent. Neither Scarlett nor Ava was breathing. The tension stretched through the room as if the air itself was infected with suspicion. The silence was so dense that the distant sound of a heart monitor in another room seemed like a drum marking the weight. Scarlett barely managed to articulate the words. Her throat felt tight. What do you mean he's not my son?" The doctor swallowed and rested his elbows on his knees. His voice was shaky. "There is no genetic match. Neither with you nor with Ethan. The child belongs to neither of you. That cannot be a coincidence. This baby was switched." Scarlett felt her soul drop to the floor. She looked at the little one in her arms, asleep, oblivious to the hell that was exploding around him. Tears streamed down without permission. They weren't just tears of sadness, they were tears of rage, of desperation, of guilt, of a loss she didn't even know how to name. Are you telling me this isn't my son? That my real son is somewhere else? I don't know, the doctor replied candidly. But we are going to find out. I promise you. And if he's no longer here? If they took him out of the hospital? If. Ava leaned towards Scarlett and took her hand firmly. Listen to me. This child was placed in your arms for a reason, and now we have proof. We are no longer in the dark. We are going to find the truth, the whole truth. While Scarlett was breaking inside, in another wing of the hospital, a more public war was brewing. The leaked report, the genetic tests, and the attempt to change the baby's identity spread across social media like fire in a dry field. The story published by Ava under a pseudonym was picked up by other independent outlets and went viral. People began to talk, debate, and judge. Some accused Scarlett of inventing everything for fame. Others demanded justice and a thorough investigation. But one thing was clear. They could no longer hide it. Eleanor Sterling arrived at the hospital that same day, furious, wearing dark sunglasses and an attorney on each side. She walked with her head held high, but her hands betrayed her nerves. She entered the room where Scarlett was still with the baby without knocking. What kind of game are you playing? Eleanor spat. What are you plotting with that journalist? What kind of sick story are you selling? Scarlett looked up, her eyes still wet. I'm not selling anything. I'm telling the truth, even if it bothers you. Truth? Eleanor laughed coldly. The truth of a single woman who sleeps around and now doesn't know who the father is. Don't play the victim. This is what you were after from the beginning. A name, money, fame. Ava calmly interrupted. Ma'am, the medical tests are clear. The baby is not the son of Scarlett or Ethan. And there are recordings where you attempt to register the child with another name without permission. I advise you not to expose yourself further. Eleanor clenched her teeth. Her breathing accelerated. This is all a setup. The doctor entered at that moment. Mrs. Sterling, I need you to leave this room. You are interfering with a patient in a vulnerable state. And you think I'll stay silent while you people destroy my family? No one needs to destroy anything, the doctor said firmly. Lies do that all on their own. Eleanor left in a fury, but this time she didn't get the last word. A mother's love and a family's foundation. That night, Scarlett didn't sleep. She held the baby all night. She looked at him as if she wanted to memorize every line of his face, because even if he wasn't hers biologically, he was already hers in her soul. She sang to him softly, a tremor in her throat. Forgive me for bringing you into this cruel world. I only wanted to protect you. She cried, not like before. This time it wasn't out of despair, but out of a love that defied logic. This child was her son, even if the DNA said otherwise, and she wasn't going to let him be taken. The next day, Ava introduced her to someone else, a woman with a kind face, a deep gaze, and a quiet strength in every word. Her name was attorney Clara Vance, from a feminist collective that had defended many mothers in similar situations. We are going to take immediate legal action, Clara said, reviewing documents. We will request injunctions to prevent the baby from being taken out of the hospital, and we will also demand a criminal investigation for the identity change. Criminal? Scarlett asked. Yes. What happened here wasn't a mistake, it was a crime. Ava and Clara had already mobilized. The Women's Advocacy Office issued a statement. Several NGOs began to pressure the hospital to take action. The general administration could no longer ignore the obvious. It was then that someone else appeared. Ethan, this time without his cap, not hiding. His face showed deep circles under his eyes, exhaustion. He didn't come in shouting. He didn't come with attorneys, just with his hands in his pockets. Can I talk to you alone? He asked Scarlett. She hesitated but nodded. When they were alone, he walked toward the window, looking out at the street for a second. I didn't know anything. I swear. You didn't know the baby wasn't yours, or you didn't know they were going to switch him? I didn't know any of this, he repeated. My mother told me you were going to invent things. That you wanted to trap me. She made me think it was all a scheme. Scarlett didn't reply. When I saw the results, I felt the world collapsing around me. Not because of the child, but because of me. Because I started asking myself who I really am. And what did you discover? Ethan turned. For the first time, his eyes were filled with genuine sadness. That I have no idea. That I have lived my whole life in a bubble made by my parents. That I have never made my own decisions. That I was always what they wanted. And now I'm lost. He sat in the chair across from her. I didn't come to justify myself. I just want to tell you something. I'm sorry. The words fell like stones. I am not what you deserve. Neither you nor this child. But if you let me, I want to help you figure out what happened. Because if that baby isn't ours, then who brought him here? Scarlett looked at him. She didn't know if she could forgive him, but she did know something. He too was a piece of a larger game, and the board was being moved by someone else. The Sterling legacy. Days later, a court summons arrived. Judge Elias Sterling had requested an urgent hearing to request custody of the baby while the facts were clarified. The request was rejected, thanks to Clara's legal action, but the move had been clear. They wanted to legally strip her of the child, no longer with threats but with paperwork. And while all that was happening, something much darker came to light. Ava received an anonymous envelope. Inside was a photocopy of a medical record from 30 years ago. A birth at a rural clinic. The baby's name wasn't listed, but the mother's name was Eleanor Sterling. According to the record, she had a complicated delivery. The child died at birth. But that wasn't the shocking part. Next to the certificate was a copy of a hospital admission at another clinic 4 days later. A child admitted as the son of Eleanor with a different weight, a non-matching age, and most terrifyingly, with no registered fingerprints. Ava investigated, and what she found was chilling. Eleanor had illegally adopted a newborn without going through any legal process. Ethan was not her biological son. When Ava showed it to the doctor, his expression was one of horror. If this is true, then the child raised as Ethan was part of a neonatal substitution. That's the missing piece. If Eleanor had done it before, she could have done it again. Scarlett received the news in shock. She sat on the bed, breathing with difficulty. What kind of people can do that? People who believe power buys everything, Ava said. But not now. The hospital opened an internal investigation. Cameras, medical orders, and charts were reviewed. Alterations, falsifications, fake signatures, the name of a non-existent pediatrician, and a nurse missing for 3 days were discovered. The case escalated. It reached television, the news, the public consciousness. Scarlett's story was no longer a small one. It was a symbol, an uncomfortable mirror for a system that often fails the most vulnerable. And just when it seemed nothing else could surprise her, the doctor called her aside. Scarlett, there's something else, and you need to know it before it's too late. His face was pale. He held a new folder in his hands. She looked at him, her heart in her throat. What did you find? He took a deep breath. The baby's real biological mother is not a registered patient, but we have a partial print that matches a missing persons report from 2 weeks ago. A young Indigenous woman from a rural community disappeared after giving birth, and nothing more was known about her. Scarlett felt the floor shake. Where is that woman? We don't know. She might be dead. The doctor looked down. He didn't have to say it. The silence said everything. Scarlett pressed her son to her chest because even if he wasn't hers, no one else was protecting him, and that was all that mattered. The grandfather's blood. Now Scarlett didn't know whether to cry, scream, or run. She was sitting in the corner of the room with the baby in her arms, her breath ragged, her mind about to break. The child to whom she had already given her heart was not only not hers nor Ethan's, but now, according to medical records, might be the son of a missing young woman, a real mother who was perhaps dead. A child trapped between secrets, lies, and families who used power to cover up what already smelled of crime. So, you're telling me this child was stolen? Scarlett asked the doctor, her voice tearing the silence. And no one noticed? We can't confirm it yet, but all signs point to it, the doctor replied, looking down. What we do know is that there was manipulation of the records. Missing fingerprints, forged signatures. The very protocol we use to identify newborns was altered. Not just anyone can do that. Scarlett closed her eyes. Her mind flashed back to that exact moment after the delivery, when she was weak, when she could barely hold the baby due to the pain of the contractions. Could he have been switched then? Could they have planned everything in advance? Ava entered at that moment, notebook under her arm and a harder look than ever. We need to talk, she said bluntly. The doctor left. Ava sat down across from Scarlett. I received an anonymous call. A former employee of a private clinic in the South. He says that in 1993 there was a similar case. A high society mother lost her child in childbirth. 3 days later, she left the hospital with another child in her arms. There was no investigation. No one asked questions. The family was too powerful. Scarlett frowned. Who are you talking about? Ava looked her directly in the eye. Eleanor Sterling and Judge Elias Sterling. Silence fell again, but this time it was not empty. It was a verdict. It was the truth screaming through the bones. Eleanor, Scarlett murmured. She stole Ethan. All signs point to yes. The child she had died at birth. The child she raised as her own appeared days later with a different weight, different size, and no prints. The file was erased from the system, but I managed to track down a retired nurse who remembers the case. She says she never forgot it. The woman's face was ravaged by pain, but she walked out of the hospital with a smile, as if everything had been fixed overnight. Scarlett slowly stood up. The baby was still asleep. She walked to the window. Her thoughts were an unending storm. So, Ethan doesn't know who he is, or where he comes from either. Everything he believed is a lie. That's right, Ava added. And there's something else. The genetic analysis of this baby partially matches the DNA of Elias Sterling. Scarlett turned confused. What do you mean? The baby you're holding is the first true blood descendant of Judge Sterling. He is the biological grandfather, which means their real son is not Ethan. It's another man, an unknown, probably from a rural community. And their grandson is this child, the child they tried to make disappear. This child is the only remaining link to their true bloodline. Scarlett staggered. So this wasn't just about hate, it was about control, about power. Exactly. They knew, or at least suspected. That's why they wanted to take the baby at all costs. That's why they called you a liar. That's why they tried to have you institutionalized. They didn't want anyone to know that their name isn't what they claim. Scarlett sat down in silence, looked at the baby, and stroked him tenderly. He deserves the truth, even if it hurts. The reckoning. That same afternoon, Scarlett asked to see Ethan. He agreed. He arrived alone, his face devastated. Sit down, Scarlett told him without raising her voice. He obeyed. I want to ask you one question, she said, looking him in the eyes. Who are you really? Ethan didn't answer. Eternal seconds passed. I don't know, he finally whispered. Everything I thought I was no longer exists. I was a project, an invention, a tool. I was raised to fill a void that wasn't mine, and when I stopped being useful, they left me alone. Your mother isn't your mother. You know that, don't you? He nodded. I know. A contact in forensic genetics confirmed it for me. I have no biological connection to her, but you know what the worst part is? I feel nothing. No rage, no sadness, just emptiness. Scarlett felt compassion, not for the man who abandoned her, but for the broken child inside him. You have to decide whose side you're on, Ethan. You can't live in the shadows anymore. I want to help you. Truly. I swear. I can't keep covering for my family anymore. I can't be complicit. Scarlett hesitated. She looked at him. She didn't know if she could trust him, but she knew that if she wanted justice, she needed to know every corner of that lie. Meanwhile, Eleanor began to deteriorate. In recent days, she had seemed more clumsy. She forgot names, confused dates. At the last family gathering, she mistook her husband for her deceased brother. A neurologist evaluated her. The preliminary diagnosis was clear: signs of early-onset Alzheimer's. The initial stages of a disease that would erase everything she had built. Elias didn't take it well. The man who had built his life on power, image, and lies now faced a wife who could reveal secrets with every confusion. He began keeping her at home, canceling interviews, forbidding visits, enforcing absolute silence. But it was already too late. The journalist Ava Thompson published a series of articles revealing all the connections. The case of the switched baby, the forged records, the judge's genetic link to the newborn. Photos of the files were leaked, along with video testimonies and interviews with former employees of the rural clinics. The entire country began to watch. Scarlett's story became a phenomenon. It was the case of the moment, the scandal of the year. Elias Sterling tried to stop the wave. He called an emissary, visited the hospital in the dead of night, and sought Scarlett out privately. We can fix this, he said bluntly. $1 million in cash, no questions asked. You disappear with the child, you go far away. You change your name, and we all win. Scarlett stared at him. Do you think you can buy me? I am sure you can be reasonable. Look around you. You are a single mother, without resources, in the middle of a media circus. This child will have no peace with you. We can give him everything. I just want to protect my family. Scarlett slowly stood up, pressed her lips together, walked toward him, and said in a low voice, The family you have doesn't deserve protection. The one I have does. Elias understood she would not relent. He left the hospital without looking back. The incurable condition. 2 days later, the hospital received an anonymous complaint. It alleged that Scarlett was illegally retaining a minor who was not hers. Social services intervention was requested. They wanted to take the child by force. Ava and Clara, the attorney, acted immediately. They gathered everything: recordings, genetic results, medical reports, statements. They assembled a legal file and presented it to the juvenile court. The case was no longer just about a switched baby. It was about institutional corruption, influence peddling, identity falsification, and child abduction. In the midst of that storm, the news that paralyzed everyone arrived. The doctor entered the room with the sternest expression she had ever seen on him. "Scarlett," he said gravely, "I need to speak with you. Alone." Ava left without protest. The doctor sat down. "The routine tests we ran on the baby detected something concerning. We repeated it several times to be sure." Scarlett sat up. "What is it?" The doctor lowered his gaze. His fingers trembled slightly. "Your son has a rare genetic disease. Spinal muscular atrophy, SMA. It's a degenerative condition. It affects neuromuscular development. There is no definitive cure. But there is an experimental treatment that can stop its progression if administered in the first few months of life." "Where?" "In Europe. And it costs over $1 million. Scarlett covered her mouth. The world was dissolving beneath her feet. "How much time do I have?" "Days, maybe weeks. The baby is stable, but if we don't act soon, he could lose mobility and even vital functions." Scarlett hugged her son. She felt her body tremble, not just from fear, but from impotence. "I'm going to save you. I promise." The doctor looked at her with sorrow. "You are not alone." But Scarlett knew that phrase, although sincere, wasn't enough because the truth had already come out, the scandal was already public, the power was already exposed. But now she faced something that neither justice, nor social media, nor cameras could resolve. A disease, an impossible bill, and the clock ticking. The voice of the cradle. Scarlett didn't know how to keep breathing after hearing the doctor. Spinal muscular atrophy. Those 3 words were an echo, a sentence that kept repeating in her head. She looked at her son sleeping, so small, so fragile, and couldn't help but wonder why. Why did this child, who had already been ripped from his biological mother, who had been switched like merchandise, who had become the object of a power struggle, now also have to face death from his bassinet? When the doctor left, Ava stayed by her side in silence. No word could alleviate what Scarlett felt. The journalist, with all her years of experience, with all the harsh stories she had heard, had never seen anything like this. A mother fighting a corrupt system, facing injustice and now disease. "We are going to do something," Ava finally said. "You can't bear this alone. We'll mobilize everything. I'll talk to organizations, I'll look for foundations, and if there's no response, we'll make noise. All the noise it takes." Scarlett didn't respond, only nodded, swallowing her tears. Hours later, Ethan arrived at the hospital. He looked different. His walk was slower, his face more drawn. He had read the diagnosis via text message. He entered the room, saw her sitting next to the baby, and stopped. His eyes blurred. "Do you know what type it is?" he asked in a low voice. Scarlett looked at him tiredly. "Type 1. The most aggressive." Ethan ran his hands over his face. "We'll take him to Europe. No matter the cost. I'll take care of it." Scarlett shook her head. "I don't want your money. It's not mine. It's for him. He's your son. Our son, or the child you raised and I didn't have the courage to protect. It doesn't matter. This isn't about pride now." "You don't understand," she said, controlling the tremor in her voice. "If I accept your money, they will say all of this was for profit, that I used the story to get it. They will turn it into another excuse to silence me. Then we'll do it without anyone knowing." "With what?" "Your family fund." Scarlett looked at him intently. "Or are you going to ask permission from the woman who raised you with lies?" Ethan fell silent. "I can't access the fund without her signature," he finally confessed. "Everything is in her name, and now she can't even remember mine." Eleanor had been secluded in her mansion for days, her moments of lucidity increasingly brief. Her mind was slowly unraveling, like the lies that had sustained her for years. The personal doctor attending her had confirmed the diagnosis: advanced early-onset Alzheimer's. Her husband protected her more than ever, but not out of love. It was fear. Fear of what she might say without a filter, of the memories that escaped as truths she never wanted to accept. Scarlett let Ethan leave. She no longer expected anything from him. She couldn't afford more disappointments. That night, the baby had a seizure. Scarlett was half asleep in a chair next to the bassinet when she heard an abnormal sound, a moan as if something had broken inside. She ran to him and saw his tiny body arching, his lips tightening, his eyes rolling back. She screamed, calling for a nurse. The baby wasn't responding. 2 doctors rushed in seconds later, hooking him up to oxygen, injecting him, intubating him. Ava ran in from the hallway. What happened? Prolonged seizure, one of the doctors said. He's going to need to be sedated. We're going to induce a coma to protect his brain. Scarlett didn't understand everything they said. She only saw her son being wheeled out of the room, surrounded by equipment, by voices speaking rapidly. She was left alone, standing in the middle of the hallway, her arms empty. She didn't cry that night, she couldn't. She had no tears left. The unconditional gift. The next day, Ava launched the campaign. Along with her team of journalists and activists, she designed a strategy to make the case go viral. They published the diagnosis, the urgency, the medical documents, and a video of Scarlett holding the baby, recorded before he fell into a coma. She didn't beg for pity, she didn't ask for charity, she only spoke of love. This child is not mine by blood, but he is mine because I chose him, because he has no one else, because he has already lost everything. And I will not allow him to lose his life too. I just need help. Help to save him. The post exploded. Within hours, media outlets across the country began replicating it. Influencers, artists, and even doctors shared the link, but it wasn't enough. One of the largest foundations in the country responded to the request: rejection. They couldn't fund overseas treatments. Not right now. The system was saturated, funds were depleted, the waiting list was endless. The government made no statement. The Department of Health issued an ambiguous press release expressing regret over the situation, but clarifying that experimental treatments were not within the scope of their coverage. Meanwhile, the Sterling family tried to clean up their image. They bought airtime on television, published interviews in allied news portals. They painted Eleanor as the victim of a mental breakdown, Ethan as the son of a desperate woman, Elias as a misunderstood public servant. They claimed the story had been exaggerated, that Scarlett had manipulated everything, that she couldn't be trusted, and public opinion divided. While some cried with her story, others doubted. While many donated what they could, others questioned her integrity. They said it was a setup, that someone like her couldn't raise a sick child, that it would be better for her to give him up, to accept the money. In the midst of all this, Scarlett remained at the hospital. She wouldn't move from the door of the intensive care unit. Every hour felt eternal. Every breath was a battle. She didn't speak, didn't eat, didn't sleep. Clara, the attorney, tried to convince her to sign an authorization to transfer the baby to a private clinic where they could stabilize him better. They are offering to cover the first few days, but it's temporary. After that, we'll have to pay. How much? $40,000 a day. Scarlett bit her lip. We'll take him, even if I have to sell my soul. The baby was transferred with care under escort. The new clinic offered better conditions, but also more aggressive invoices. In 3 days, the debt exceeded $100,000. It was then that an unexpected figure appeared. Eleanor, dressed in a hospital gown, accompanied by a nurse. Her gaze was empty but calm. She walked slowly, as if searching for something she couldn't name. When she reached the waiting room, she saw Scarlett. "I know that face," she asked. Scarlett stood up, stunned. "Yes, it's me. Scarlett." Eleanor observed her, tilted her head, and smiled. "You have sad eyes like mine when I was a girl." Ethan rushed over, placing himself between them. "Mom, you shouldn't be here." Eleanor looked at him. "You are my son." He didn't know what to say. The nurse approached to take her back to her room, but Eleanor clung to Scarlett's arm. "Can I see the baby? The one who cried so loud?" Scarlett couldn't stop herself. She nodded. They entered together. Eleanor approached the intensive care bassinet. The child was sedated, connected to tubes and machines that flickered like 6 stars. She knelt, looking at him for a long time. "I know him," she said softly. "This child is part of me. I don't know how I know, but he is." Scarlett looked at her with a knot in her chest. "And he is not your grandson, but he is." Eleanor closed her eyes. A tear slid down her cheek. "Everything I did was out of fear, of not feeling empty, of not facing the pain." Scarlett didn't answer. It wasn't necessary. Hours later, Eleanor had an episode. She became disoriented. She tried to leave the clinic alone. She was found in the parking lot, sitting on the ground, crying like a child. From then on, her deterioration was faster. Elias decided to admit her to a specialized facility out of state, away from the media, away from the trial, because now the trial was approaching. The prosecutor's office took the case. The evidence was overwhelming. False documents, testimonies, genetic tests, medical records. Elias Sterling was summoned to testify. The scandal was unstoppable, but the baby remained in a coma. Scarlett visited him every morning. She sang him songs her own mother used to sing to her when she was a child. She spoke to him as if he could hear her, as if her voice were the only thread still connecting him to this world. Ava continued to move the campaign. They raised $100,000, then $200,000, then $300,000, but it wasn't enough. Every day was more expensive, every second more critical. Until the feared day arrived. The doctor called her to his office. "We have to make a decision. The treatment in Europe must start in the coming weeks. If we don't, the prognosis is terminal." Scarlett nodded without speaking. "We need to act now. There is no more time." Scarlett left the office with her throat constricted. She looked at the sky. It was gray. The wind was biting, and for the first time, she thought she might not succeed, but she couldn't give up because when all hope was gone, all that remained was love, that fierce, unconditional love. And it was that love that kept her standing when she returned to the ward and saw the doctor with his eyes downcast. "The baby has entered an induced coma. We had to do it. His body couldn't take any more." Scarlett fell to her knees. The world had gone dark again. The miracle of love and the voice of the Cradle Foundation. Scarlett fell to her knees in front of the door of the intensive care unit. Her son had been put into a coma. His body, so small, so brave, couldn't endure any more. There were no screams, no lamentations, no pleas. Only the silence of a mother's shredded soul, who no longer knew how many times she could break without vanishing. The doctor promised her nothing, only that they had done everything possible to keep him alive, but the treatment, the one that cost millions and could give him a chance, was still out of reach. The campaign had raised more than anyone imagined, but not enough. And time, as always, became her cruelest enemy. Scarlett stayed in the waiting room, her head resting against the wall as the hours slipped away like water through her fingers. Ava sat beside her in silence. Sometimes the best comfort is the quiet presence of someone who doesn't try to fix the irreparable. Clara arrived with reports, with judicial updates, with good legal news that was worthless against the possibility of losing the only thing she had left. "If we lose him," Scarlett said, her voice broken, "will all of this have been for nothing?" Ava looked at her with moist eyes. "No, because even if you can't see it now, you changed something. You woke up many people and gave a voice to those who never had one." But for Scarlett, the only voice she needed was her son's. And that voice was now asleep under sedation, connected to a machine that breathed for him. That night, while the hospital slept, Scarlett asked permission to enter the unit. The moved medical staff allowed it. She crossed the hallway in silence. When she reached the intensive care bassinet, she saw him there, so still, so fragile, but still fighting. She sat beside him, took his little hand, and brought it to her face. "My love, you were my truth in a world full of lies," she whispered. "You taught me not to give up, to face monsters I didn't even know existed. I don't know if you'll wake up, I don't know if you'll stay with me, but I do know that if you leave, you won't leave alone. I'll carry you with me in every step, in every fight." Scarlett leaned closer and sang softly, the same song her mother used to sing to her when she was a child, a song about hope in the midst of pain. And in that moment, something on the monitor shifted. A slight movement, a faint beep, a sigh. The doctors rushed in, but there was no panic, only glances exchanged. The doctor looked at her and nodded. "He's fighting." Scarlett didn't want to get her hopes up, but she didn't let go of his hand either. 3 days passed, and then came the call. "Ms. Hayes, the Swiss lab informs us that the treatment has been cleared. An anonymous donor covered the remaining difference. The medication is on its way." Scarlett didn't understand. Neither did Ava. Who had done it? Where had this help come from? The answer arrived hours later. A handwritten letter, delivered by Eleanor Sterling's personal attorney, without a sender, without a clear signature, but with the Sterling family's official seal. Money cannot change the past, but perhaps it can still save something of the future. Do not ask me to justify it. Do not ask me to face you. Just do what I never knew how to do. Love without conditions. It was Eleanor's handwriting. Perhaps in one of her lucid moments, she decided to do the only thing she had left to do. Give that child what no one in her family had ever been able to give, a real chance. The medication arrived. It was administered. The doctors didn't promise miracles, but they spoke of hope. The baby's body slowly began to respond, with difficulty, but with signs of a struggle. Scarlett breathed again. Days later, the child's eyes slowly opened, and the first person he saw was her. He didn't speak words because he couldn't yet, but his gaze said everything. He recognized her. He knew who she was. He knew his home was there. Weeks passed. Therapy began, the body reacted. It wasn't a cure, but it was a truce, an opportunity. Ethan appeared less often. He said he needed to find his truth, to know where he came from, who he really was. Scarlett didn't stop him. She knew his story was also made up of voids that needed answers. Before leaving, he looked at her with respect. "Thank you for showing me what true love means. And thank you for not obstructing me when I needed you most," Scarlett replied without bitterness. And he left to search for his roots, to find himself far from the name that never belonged to him. The trial against Judge Elias Sterling advanced. The evidence was undeniable. Document forgery, identity concealment, manipulation of hospital records, and complicity in a network that was still being dismantled. Although he tried to use his contacts, the scandal was too great. He fell not as a victim, but as a symbol of everything that needed to change. Ava Thompson was honored for her coverage of the case. She received one of the most important journalism awards in the country, and when she went on stage, instead of offering thanks, she did something braver. "This award is not mine, it belongs to Scarlett. It belongs to every woman who gave birth in silence, who was ignored, mistreated, judged. It belongs to every mother who chose to fight, even when she knew she might lose. And for that reason, the entire amount of this award will go to the foundation being born today, Voice of the Cradle." Scarlett didn't know she would do it, but when she heard her name on television, with tears in her eyes, she knew she was no longer alone. Months later, Voice of the Cradle became a reality. An NGO directed by Scarlett, with the legal support of Clara, the fieldwork of Ava, and the strength of mothers who had united from across the country. Women from rural communities, from marginalized neighborhoods, from overwhelmed clinics, all with something in common: the right not to be silenced. Scarlett spoke at conferences, in the media, in university lecture halls. She no longer trembled when she did so. Her voice was clear, firm, and warm. She spoke of pain with respect, of poverty without shame, of motherhood with dignity. And every time someone asked her about her son, she smiled. "He's alive. He's fighting, just like all of us." Eleanor, meanwhile, lived in a private residence in the north. She didn't remember names, dates, or faces, but there was something curious. Every time she heard a quiet lullaby, she would weep silently, as if something inside her knew what her mind had forgotten. One day, during a medical visit, a young nurse hummed a tune to soothe her. Eleanor closed her eyes and murmured, "Don't take him from me. He's mine. He's mine." The nurse didn't understand, but another social worker wrote it down, and that note was later read by Scarlett. The truth had a strange way of lingering, even if it was only in whispers. Years passed. The baby, now 5 years old, walked with support. His mobility was limited, but his smile was not. He laughed, played, and learned new words every week. He said, "Mommy," clearly. And when he clung to Scarlett's neck, nothing else mattered. At one of her conferences, in a room packed with mothers, Scarlett took the microphone, took a deep breath, looked at the audience, and said, "I couldn't save my son from pain. I couldn't save him from injustice, from illness, from a system that wasn't designed to protect us. But I could save him from oblivion, from indifference. I was able to teach him that his life has worth, that his story matters, that he was not a mistake, he was a miracle." There was applause, tears, silence, and then hope, because her voice was no longer just hers. It was the voice of many, of all. A voice that is never silenced. There are many people going through a similar situation. We hope her voice lives on in you. Share this story and be part of the change. If you liked this story, I invite you to leave a comment about how you felt hearing it. And if you have gone through a similar situation of deceit, I would love for you to share your valuable opinion. Remember to tell me what city you are watching this video from. I would be very honored if you leave a like, share the video with a friend or family member, and subscribe to the channel. Don't miss the next surprising story appearing on your screen right now. We have guaranteed entertainment exclusively for you.